Last week we read how the voice from above instructed Savitri what she has to do for the next step of her yoga. And the last 3 lines on page 538 say, she was told to consent to be nothing and none, dissolve time's work, cast off thy mind, step back from form and name, annul thyself, that only God may be. In the normal human state, we are focused in our surface personality. And an important part of that is the mental personality, the surface mental personality. That's what we identify ourselves with. Of course, we identify ourselves with the body, with the feelings and emotions and sensations, but all that gets organized by the mind. But in the previous canto, we saw how Savitri found her soul. She found the psychic being and was able to unite with the source, with the central being above. So that already means that she's no longer fully organized in the mind. She has another center of identification. But now she's being asked to give up even that sense of individuality, of being a person. And for that, she's told, you have to cast off your mind. You have to step back from everything that the mind tells you about, forms and names. You are going to have to annul, to make nothing, everything that you feel you are, everything that you recognize as yourself. So Savitri is starting on that journey, and the first step was to become quiet and observe all the movements going on within her consciousness. And particularly, we were told, she focused on the many births of thought. Where are the thoughts coming from? And in the last 2 lines which we read, we were told, in our unseen subtle body, thought is born. Or there it enters from the cosmic field. So either it comes up from the subtle levels of our being, our subtle body, or it comes into the subtle body from the universal field of vibrations. So now we get a beautiful description of what she saw, of these thoughts, where they are coming from. Oft from her soul stepped out a naked thought, luminous, with mysteried lips and wonderful eyes. Or from her heart emerged some burning face and looked for life and love and passionate truth, aspired to heaven, or embraced the world, or led the fancy like a fleeting moon across the dull sky of man's common days, amidst the doubtful certitudes of earth's law, to the celestial beauty of faith gave form, as if at flower prints in a dingy room laughed in a golden vase one living rose. A thaumaturgist sat in her heart's deep, compelled the forward stride, the upward look, till wonder leaped into the illumined breast, and life grew marvelous with transfiguring hope. A seeing will pondered between the brows. Thoughts, glistening angels, stood behind the brain in flashing armor, folding hands of prayer, and poured heaven's rays into the earthly form. Imaginations flamed up from her breast, unearthly beauty, touches of surpassing joy, and plans of miracle, dreams of delight. Around her navel lotus, clustering close, her large sensations of the teeming worlds streamed their dumb movements of the unformed idea, invading the small sensitive flower of the throat. They brought their mute, unuttered resonances to kindle the figures of a heavenly speech. Below, desires formed their wordless wish, and longings of physical sweetness and ecstasy translated into the accents of a cry their grasp on objects and their clasp on souls. Her body's thoughts climbed from her conscious limbs and carried their yearnings to its mystic crown, where nature's murmurs meet the ineffable. So in the previous chapter we read about the chakras, the different centers, and how they had been transformed by that descent of the Mother's presence into Savitri's whole being. So now when she looks in her inner being, very, very beautiful thoughts come out from all the centers. This might not be our own normal experience. Exceptionally, something like this might happen. You are starting, Rosa? Yeah.
Oft from her soul stepped out a naked thought, luminous with mysterious lips and wonderful eyes, or from her heart emerged some burning face and looked for life and love and passion, truth,
Aspired.
Aspired to heaven, or embraced the world, or led the fancy like a fleeting moon across the dull sky of man's common days, amidst the doubtful certitudes of earth's law, to the celestial beauty of fate gave form, as if a flower prince in a dingy room laughed in a golden vase on living rose.
Yes. So often, oft, short form of often, from her soul stepped out a naked thought. It is naked because it's absolutely pure. It's full of light. There's a face. This thought has a face. It has lips which are full of mystery. It has wonderful eyes. That's the thoughts that come from the soul. And then the rest of the lines which Rosa read refer to the kind of thoughts which come from the heart center. From her heart emerged, came out, some burning face, a face that's full of flame and intensity, that's looking for life and love and passionate truth. The heart is passionate. It wants intense feeling, and even truth should be passionate. It should have some intensity. So those thoughts, some of them aspired to heaven, some of them embraced the world, and some of them led the imagination, the fancy or fantasy. So those thoughts, they are like a fleeting moon. A moon, maybe a full moon, but it is coming and going, like when there are clouds in the sky. But still, that moon, even though it's fleeting, it lights up the dull sky of man's common days, our ordinary grey days that are like nights actually. They get lit up by these thoughts that come from the heart. Or another thing that these heart thoughts do, they give life. So he says that they give form to the heavenly beauty of faith. Faith makes one feel absolutely sure and confident of something. It becomes real through faith. No? So that happens, he says, in the middle of the doubtful certitudes of earth's law. Law is knowledge that we have learned. We have learned it in school, or we've learned it from books, or we've learned it from other people. It is not something that we know from our own experience. But so those kind of certitudes, that oh, it is like this and it is like that, those are doubtful certitudes. They don't convince our whole being. May convince the mind. But if faith comes, if a thought from the heart lights up that doubtful law with faith, then there's a kind of transformation. And Sri Aurobindo contrasts it. He says it's like being in a dingy room, a grey, dusty room where there's not much light, and that room is decorated on the walls. There are flower prints, not even actual paintings, but reproductions of paintings. And laughing at those reproductions of paintings, there's one living rose laughing out its beauty in a golden vase. That is the difference between the doubtful certitudes of earth's law and the celestial beauty of faith.
This is called a metaphor, comparing.
Yeah, this is as if, so this is a simile. Yeah. Joel.
Thaumaturgists sat in their hearts to compel the forward stride, the upward look, till wonder leaped into the illumined breast, and life grew marvelous with transfiguring hope.
So a thaumaturgist is a person who can work miracles, who does miraculous things. So deep in Savitri's heart, there's a being or a power that can work miracles. And that miracle worker is compelling, giving the energy to move forward and to look up to the heights. And by that influence, it's as if wonder leaps into the breast, which becomes full of light. No? And then the whole of life grows marvelous with transfiguring hope. This can happen sometimes when a hope of something very, very special, some new possibility, some new realization comes. It can change our whole outlook on life. Alice, you would read next.
A seeing will pondered between the brows. Thoughts, glistening angels, stood behind the brain, in flashing armor, folding hands of prayer, and poured heaven's rays into the earthly form.
So she sees these things also, no? In the subtle body. There's a seeing will, a will that has power of vision, and that is seated here in this chakra, the chakra of vision and will, between the brows. And she also sees special kind of thoughts standing behind the brain, not where the ordinary thoughts are formed. They are like angels, shining, wearing armor. They are warriors. but at the same time they are folding hands of prayer, they are worshipping. And their work is to pour the light of heaven into the earthly form. They are doing that, standing behind the brain, receiving the light from above and passing it into the body.
So these are different kinds of thoughts that are arising in there or in common man also.
I think this is in Savitri. Of course, this can happen to us, but next Sri Aurobindo will tell us that for us it is a bit different. Yes, but this can happen. Sergei.
Imaginations flame up from the west, and earthly beauty, touch of surpassing joy, and plans of miracle, dreams of delight. Rock your navel lotus, clustering flows, large sensations of the teeming rolls. Stream their down movements of the unfold ideas, invading the small sensitive flower of the thread. They brought their new unuttered resonance to kindle the figures of the heavenly speech.
So also from the heart region, coming up imaginations. This is the area where the life being and the mind being meet. So imaginations are coming up from her breast, expressing unearthly beauty, beauty that we don't see here on the earth. And they bring touches of surpassing joy, intense joy beyond anything that we normally experience. And plans of miracle. We imagine things that could happen. We start to think about how it could be realized. This is one very important function of our imagination, to help us to see new possibilities. Plans of miracle, dreams of delight. And then lower down, the navel lotus. This is the center of sensations. So around the navel lotus, clustering close, all these sensations. But now in Savitri, these are not just physical sensations. These are large, wide sensations of the teeming worlds. So it means not only physical sensations, but subtle sensations from the many worlds. And they are streaming into her consciousness. They're dumb movements. They don't express themselves in words. They are just movements, these sensations. But they do express unformed ideas. And those clustering around the navel, they come up to invade, to enter here the throat chakra, the small sensitive flower of the throat, which is where things get expressed. So to there they brought their mute, unuttered resonances. They are dumb, they don't speak, they don't utter, they don't say or express anything, but there's some kind of vibration that comes up to here, and here at the throat it kindles, it sets fire, it sets alight the figures of a heavenly speech. This is where things get put into words.
Spirit says it's heavenly speech.
Yes, so because this throat center has been transformed, it's able to give utterance to heavenly speech. Suresh.
Below decides formed the wordless wish and longings of physical sweetness and ecstasy translated into the
Accents.
accents of a cry, their grasp on objects and their clasp on souls.
So there's this lower center here where the desires come from. This is where the desires, they don't put things in words, but they make suggestions to us. No? They formed their wordless wish, and that's where there are longings of all different kinds, longings of physical sweetness and ecstasy. And these, they don't express themselves in words, but it's like they're crying, calling out for something. Accent. People speak with different accents. Rosa speaks with a Russian accent, and Alice speaks with an American accent, and Joel speaks with a French accent, and so on. So, but a cry can also have an accent. It can have a way of expressing itself, a special sound. No? And this is where we have our grasp on objects. This is where we are in contact with the world around us. No? But in this lower center too, Savitri sees that there's a way of clasping souls, having a subtler contact with the beings and things around. Andres?
Her body's thoughts climb from her conscious limbs and carry their journeys to its mystic crown. Her nature's murmurs meet the ineffable.
Yes. So all these thoughts coming from different parts of the body, even from the most physical parts, they move up, and her limbs have become conscious. In us, it's usually not like that. We only become conscious if there's a pain somewhere, no, something goes wrong. All these thoughts are climbing up, and most of them are yearning, they are asking or calling, crying for something, up to this mystic crown which is just above the top of the head here. And this is the center here, the Sahasradala, where the cries and murmurs of nature meet the higher levels. So Savitri observes all this happening. Ellen, you will read?
But for the mortal prison in outward mind, all must present their passports at its door. Disguise they must, don the official cap and mask, or pass as manufacturers of the blade, unknown their secret truth and hidden soul.
So Savitri is seeing all this, no? But for us, we are imprisoned in the outer mind. So all the thoughts, wherever they are coming from, they have to show their passports, and in order to be allowed through, they have to put on the uniform, disguise themselves. They must put on the official cap and mask. Or they must pass as if they've been manufactured in the brain. In either case, their secret truth and their hidden source is unknown when they come into the surface mind. You'll read?
Only to the inner mind they speak direct, put on a body and assume a voice. Their basic scene, their message had and done, their workplace and their natal mark revealed and stand confessed to an immortal sight. Our nature's messages to the witness soul.
Yes. So as long as we are imprisoned in our outward mind, we won't be able to see what these thoughts are and where they're coming from and what they have to say to us. Only they speak directly to the inner mind. We have a deeper mind within, and they can speak to that inner mind. Then they can put on an appearance, a body. They can speak, they can say something. Their passage, where they have come from, can be seen, and their message can be heard and known, and even can be revealed, can be shown where they were born and what is the mark of their birth, their natal mark, the sign of where they were born, their special characteristic. Then, to the inner mind, they can stand confessed, undisguised, open, obvious, what they really are to the sight of the immortal, and can be seen as the messengers from our nature to speaking to, carrying the messages to our soul, our witness soul, which is standing and watching. So that is what Savitri is doing. She's stepping back into the witness soul, and so she can see all these messengers as they are. Ganga Lakshmi.
Impenetrable result of mortal sense, the inner chambers of the spirit's house, disclose to her their happenings and their guests. Eyes look through crevice in the invisible world, and through the secrecy of unseen doors. There came into mind's little frontal lobe two thoughts that enlarge our limited human range, lifted the ideal's half quench of sinking touch, or peered through the finite at the infinite.
Thank you. So there are inner rooms in this house of the Spirit that's within us, and they are impenetrable. It's difficult to get into them. Particularly the senses, our physical senses, can't penetrate into those inner rooms. But to Savitri, they show to her, they disclose, it means to reveal to her their happenings and their guests, who is visiting there, those inner rooms, and what is going on there. this kind of invisible wall which separates our outer sensations and senses from the inner being, from the spirit's house. There are eyes that look out through crevices, little cracks in the wall. And there are doors, invisible doors that open. The thoughts pass through from those inner rooms. They come out into this little frontal room, the room where the mind receives its guests from outside. So from deep within come these thoughts that enlarge, make wider and larger our limited human range of thinking. No? Some of these thoughts are very inspiring. It's as if they lift up the torch, the shining torch of the ideal, of higher realities. That in the human mind, that torch may be sinking, the fire may be going out, or it may be even half quenched, almost completely extinguished. But those thoughts light them up again. Or they may peer. Peering means what you do, looking through a crevice, trying to see what's outside. So the idea of peering through the finite. All these appearances that we see are finite, they are limited, but they are carrying behind them, within them, they are carrying the infinite energies, the infinite possibilities. So these deep thoughts from deep within can come and suggest to us deeper truths behind these surface appearances. So Patricia.
My sight opened up on the invisible and sensed the shapes that mortal eyes see not, the sounds that mortal listening cannot hear, the blissful sweetness of the intangible's touch. The objects that to us are empty air are there, the stuff of daily experience, and the common pattern of sense.
Yes. So from inner mind there's a power of sight, of seeing, that opens on what is invisible to our physical eyes. It's sensed the shapes that our human mortal eyes, actually mortal means the eyes that have to die. So it is to do with physical eyes. No? Our physical eyes don't see those shapes, but the inner eye, the inner seeing can see them. And the inner hearing can hear sounds that our mortal listening cannot hear. And there are things which are intangible to us, which we cannot sense with our sense of touch. But the inner mentality can feel the blissful sweetness of the intangible's touch. So in that inner world, the objects that to us are empty air, there's nothing here, there they can be perceived. They're the stuff of daily experience and the common pabulum of sense and thought. You know this word, Patricia? Pabula, you don't know this?
It's
baby food.
baby food.
Something that's very easy to swallow and digest, and a bit boring. doesn't necessarily taste very interesting. Very well.
The beings of the subtle realms appeared, and senses concealed,
This is scenes.
and senses concealed behind our earthly scene. She saw the light of remote continents, and distance defend not the voices far. She felt the movements crossing unknown minds. Past events appeared before her eyes.
So this is what happens when the inner mind opens up. No? It begins to be able to see the beings who live in the subtle realms, the subtle worlds. And she can see scenes, landscapes, things happening that are hidden behind these scenes that we see, these appearances. And she can see into the distance. She can see the life of remote continents, continents that are very far away. And she can also not only see but hear that life which is there on those far away continents. She can hear the voices there. The fact that there's distance, it doesn't deafen the subtle hearing. She can feel the movements, the energies and thoughts that are passing through minds of people far away that she doesn't know. And she becomes able to see the events of the past happening right before the inner eyes. Bhavana.
The great world's thoughts were part of her own thought. The feelings jump forever and unshared. The ideas that never found an utterance.
So these are other thoughts, no? These are now things that are coming to her from the universal, what did he say? They come from the cosmic field, the universal field. So these, whatever thoughts are moving around in the whole world, they enter into her inner mind, become part of her own thought. And those feelings that don't get expressed, don't get shared, she can feel them. Ideas that have never been put into words, she is able to be aware of them. The dim subconscious incoherent hints laid bare a meaning twisted, deep and strange, the bizarre secret of their fumbling speech, their links with underlying reality. The unseen grew visible and audible. Thoughts leaped down from a superconscient field like eagles swooping from a viewless peak. Thoughts gleamed up from the screened subliminal depths like golden fishes from a hidden sea. So these are other sources, other birthplaces of thought. No? Some of them come up from the dim subconscious, and they come up in the form of hints, small indications. You give somebody a hint, you don't tell them fully, just a short idea. These hints are incoherent. They don't get fully expressed. They're not fully formed. But to her perception, they reveal a meaning, but a meaning that is very twisted, that's deep, that's strange. They get expressed in a fumbling speech. When you're fumbling, you don't find, your fingers don't work properly, you can't do things properly, you can't find what you want. So a speech that can't really express what it wants to say, that wants to express a bizarre secret, a strange secret. And those hints and that fumbling speech, they do have a connection with underlying reality. What's the secrets that are underlying what we think of as reality. And to her consciousness, what is unseen became seen and heard. And she's aware that thoughts come from very high up. Thoughts are leaping down from a superconscient field, a level which is beyond the reach of our consciousness. But thoughts do come down from there. They come down like eagles, eagles who come down to catch their prey, swooping down, coming from a very, very high peak. And other thoughts are shining up from these hidden depths as if from a deep sea, golden fishes appearing, gleaming up from a hidden sea. So we have these heights and these depths in our being. We have the subliminal areas beyond, in the inner consciousness. Also, our inner mind can reach very, very far, become aware of what's going on in the whole world. Thoughts can come from all these places, and Savitri is becoming aware of that.
What is the actual meaning of subliminal?
The root of the word is limen, which is a threshold. What is the word for threshold in Tamil? Where we step over to enter through the door. It must have a name.
We can call it as ideveli. Ideveli, the space between two places.
Yeah, that kind of borderline between the outside and the inside, the threshold. So in all cultures, that's a very important place. I know in some parts of India, you can't step on it. You're not supposed to put your foot on. You're not supposed to sit there. You can sit on the step outside or the step inside, but not on the threshold. No? So there's a kind of threshold, a borderline like that, between our outer consciousness and our inner consciousness. But just as you can stand outside the door and get some idea what's happening inside, with the subliminal, we can become aware, if we're in a receptive state, of some things that are there in the subliminal. But to be able to really know, then you would have to step over and go into that other state of consciousness. But that's the idea with subliminal, that it's not completely subconscious or superconscious. It somehow can be accessible. So we could perhaps dive into that hidden sea and find out what is there, the screened subliminal depths. Yes, Andres?
So this would mean that according to the quality of our thoughts, we could guess with which part of our
where
being
they are coming from.
or what connection do we have at that moment?
Yes, we could, but he says here that it's difficult for us in our outer mind. We would have to access the inner mind to be able to be really aware where these thoughts are coming from and what kind of message they're carrying. So that's perhaps what we try to do in meditation or concentration. We quieten the surface mind and become aware. And of course there are different kind of exercises that one can practice, visualizations of, opening that inner door and seeing who comes out and speaks to you, what they have to say. And sometimes, of course, they come out and they express themselves and we've no idea where they came from. This can happen in the form of inspiration, and it can happen in the form of, really harmful things that we say, and we can't imagine how we could ever have let them pass through our lips. No? So it's better to be conscious and to know what is the origin.
Oft from her soul stepped out a naked thought, luminous with mysteried lips and wonderful eyes. Or from her heart emerged some burning face and looked for life and love and passionate truth, aspired to heaven, or embraced the world, or led the fancy like a fleeting moon across the dull sky of man's common days, amidst the doubtful certitudes of earth's law. To the celestial beauty of faith gave form, as if at flower prints in a dingy room laughed in a golden vase one living rose. A thaumaturgist sat in her heart's deep, compelled the forward stride, the upward look, till wonder leaped into the illumined breast, and life grew marvelous with transfiguring hope. As seeing will pondered between the brows, thoughts, glistening angels, stood behind the brain in flashing armor, folding hands of prayer, and poured heaven's rays into the earthly form. Imaginations flamed up from her breast, unearthly beauty, touches of surpassing joy, and plans of miracle, dreams of delight. Around her navel lotus, clustering close, her large sensations of the teeming worlds streamed their dumb movements of the unformed idea. Invading the small, sensitive flower of the throat, they brought their mute, unuttered resonances to kindle the figures of a heavenly speech. Below, desires formed their wordless wish, and longings of physical sweetness and ecstasy translated into the accents of a cry their grasp on objects and their clasp on souls. Her body's thoughts climbed from her conscious limbs and carried their yearnings to its mystic crown, where nature's murmurs meet the ineffable. But for the mortal prisoned in outward mind, all must present their passports at its door. Disguised, they must don the official cap and mask, or pass as manufactures of the brain, unknown their secret truth and hidden source. Only to the inner mind they speak direct, put on a body and assume a voice, their passage seen, their message heard and known, their birthplace and their natal mark revealed, and stand confessed to an immortal sight, our nature's messengers to the witness soul. Impenetrable, withheld from mortal sense, the inner chambers of the spirit's house disclosed to her their happenings and their guests. Eyes looked through crevices in the invisible wall, and through the secrecy of unseen doors there came into mind's little frontal room thoughts that enlarged our limited human range, lifted the ideal's half-quenched or sinking torch, or peered through the finite at the infinite. A sight opened upon the invisible, and sensed the shapes that mortal eyes see not, the sounds that mortal listening cannot hear, the blissful sweetness of the intangible's touch. The objects that to us are empty air are there the stuff of daily experience and the common pabulum of sense and thought. The beings of the subtle realms appeared, and scenes concealed behind our earthly scene. She saw the life of remote continents, and distance deafened not to voices far. She felt the movements crossing unknown minds. The past's events occurred before her eyes. The great world's thoughts were part of her own thought. The feelings dumb forever and unshared, the ideas that never found an utterance. The dim subconscious incoherent hints laid bare a meaning twisted, deep and strange, the bizarre secret of their fumbling speech, their links with underlying reality. The unseen grew visible and audible. Thoughts leaped down from a superconscient field like eagles swooping from a viewless peak. Thoughts gleamed up from the screened subliminal depths like golden fishes from a hidden sea.